You got the touch.
This is Stan Bush, and you're listening to the Geekcast Radio Network. Dream the dream this August.
Hello and welcome to episode 245 of the Cinema Geeks. I'm one of your Cinema Geeks Optimus Solo, and joining me as usual is the Comic Concierge. How you doing, Dan?
Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. It seems like a whirlwind of a week or two here. My daughter finished kindergarten about, I think her last day was the 2nd of June, technically, even though it was early dismissal. So that was just this past week, and now she's home, obviously all the time. So we're experiencing that again. And we're also in the middle of completely redoing our guest room and bathroom. Like, we had all the carpet tore up and we put new tile flooring in, and we spent the last few days painting, and all of the furniture from that bedroom is currently in our living room and kitchen and dining room area. So my daughter has been sleeping on a queen size bed that's smack in the middle of our living room in front of the TV. So we are anxious to eventually get the house back in order. So it's seemed like a crazy last 7 to 10 days. How about yourself?
Yeah, well, my kids are still in school. I'm jealous. I'm jealous because my kids are in school till the 19th, so they still have a bit to. Yeah, they have a bit to go. But but it's still crazy week time for us too, because concerts and a lot going on that end, and so that's a fun time, and we've vacation coming up, and so it's kind of, May is always crazy, and also, but within that, we are in the thick of summer movie season and going to the movies a lot lately, and it happened that we matched up and we both went to the movies the same weekend, which has not happened in a while. So
yeah, that's crazy. I'm so glad I got to sneak it in too, because now with my daughter not in school, like, we had to figure out like when her grandparents could watch her, so I wasn't able to go opening night or the preview night or even Saturday, so I had to wait a little while. I know it's still opening weekend, but for me it was like one of the ones that I, like, for sure was not necessarily wanting to see opening day, but I wanted to see before anything got spoiled for me. It's that type of a film for sure. And then I'm also flying to Texas for business for like the majority of this next week. So I was like, everything lined up and I was able to sneak it in. So I'm very happy that that was able to happen.
it's nice. And this is, I'm not mistaken, this was your most anticipated movie of the year. Am I not wrong?
Correct. From a completely geek centric fanboy point of view, like, not necessarily like the quote unquote like cinema side of things, and like, getting into something that was going to take super serious. But yes, this was definitely from just that standpoint, and partially because this film has been talked about and rumored and alluded to. I don't have the exact time, but at least for 20 years.
Yeah.
Like, I know the original live action quote unquote film. There were some animated films as well. I don't know why I did quote unquote, but there was some animated film with The Secret of the Sword that kind of bridged He-Man and She-Ra, and then there was the 1987 live action film. And then it seems like right around the same time period that the 2002 series came out, the Mike Young production, I think it was on Cartoon Network, that really the rumor mill started churning about a live action film, and there was like 1,000 different writers and directors and people connected to it that never came to fruition. I was actually listening to a podcast that Mike and I had done previously where we were kind of recapping all of one of the He-Man series, and we literally teased like that one of the next episodes we did was going to be about the live action film that literally never happened until right now. So, and even kind of, I guess, kind of going back to the 1987 film, because that film leaves off with a cliffhanger as if there would be more to follow, which obviously didn't happen. The 1987 film, along with one other film that studio did, literally put that studio out of business in a very like rapid night. I'm sure there's a lot more complex factors that went into that, but like it definitely was like the last two films that it did not do it any justice, and the studio kind of folded shortly thereafter. So we definitely never got the answer to the cliffhanger from the 1987 film, and then oddly enough, the 2002 cartoon series also ended up getting canceled early and left us with a cliffhanger. So it's like, at
Nice.
one point, like, are we going to get any of this? And now I'm really scared because of how this one ends. So we'll get into that much later. But yeah, I will kind of. We're going to start off by just giving some general thoughts on the film, some reactions, our maybe our theater experience and things of that nature. So it'll be spoiler free here at the beginning, and then we'll probably fairly quickly just put up a spoiler warning and get into more of the nitty gritty as far as the movie goes. But Dan, anything you wanted to talk about before I kind of share my feelings?
I will say though, be careful which movie you watch because there is a Master of the Universe movie which I almost watched because I was like scrolling through. I think Amazon, just seeing what's on.
Ah,
And I was scrolling through, and I'm like, it's like Master of the Universe, and if you look at the poster, it looks like a He-Man poster. It's like a really muscular guy with a sword, and I'm like, what is? It's like I thought well, that's wait, it's not out because I know it's an Amazon movie,
right.
right? So I'm like, wait, I thought. So I clicked on it and I'm like, what is this? And I looked at the cast list. I'm like, that's not. But it was an Amblin movie, like the people who make
Oh,
the
okay.
the mockbusters, whose
Yeah.
entire premise basically is like people don't pay attention. So if we make something that kind of looks like it and the title is close enough, we can just make enough money to make a
Yeah.
living, which is kind of crazy. That like lack of attention to detail is all a studio needs to exist.
Yep.
But yeah, don't watch it. I looked at I watched the trailer. It looks pretty. It looks like wow.
I'm pretty
This
sure a
is
lot of those films were like the ones that used to show up in like the dollar bin at Walmart.
oh yeah, yeah,
It was like
definitely.
good fodder for like a crappy movie night if you want to get together with some friends
Oh
and like have a
yeah,
drink or something, or just do your
uh,
Mystery Science Theater 3000 stuff.
yeah. Definitely did that with. They made that's the same studio that of course they made Sharknado, but they also made Titanic 2. That's quite the watch. So
Oh Lord, that gives me memories of like Nazis in the center of the earth or something. Like
yeah.
I don't know what we watched. It was like something bizarre that some friends and I used to watch on crappy movie night. But yeah, one of them had I swear one of them had Mark Hamill in it. But that's a story for another day. Starting
Yeah.
off with my theater experience, I need to go into this because this is like the quintessential like it reminds me of obviously, this doesn't apply to me because 'cause I've been to a lot of films, right? Like, I go to the theater I used to go to the theater a lot, obviously not as much since my daughter's been born, but I'm sure that'll start to pick up here soon. But it's like the quintessential story of someone that hasn't been to the theater since the original He-Man movie in 1987 because on my trip to the theater, it basically what it came across as if I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So I bought tickets for this film. Once I knew that it was gonna be the Sunday that was gonna be the day that I was gonna see it. We always buy our tickets early because both the theaters near me, I don't know, I think most theaters just in general now allow you to, like, pick your seats and stuff like that, but at least that's how it is near me. So I was like, "Okay, I gotta get online a little bit early, make sure we get our seats, etcetera." So I bought our prototypical seats, which are the back all the way to the back and then the middle too. Like, that's what we always buy. And so I did that, and we were all set to go. There hadn't been many tickets purchased at that point, so figured we were good. The movie was gonna start at 4 o'clock today, so I am definitely coming right off the heels of this. So we dropped my daughter off at her grandparents' house. We drive to the theater. We actually went to a little bit further theater. There is a theater that's somewhat closer that has nicer it's a nicer building, it's nicer seating, etcetera, but they also didn't think they were gonna have any of, like, the special merch and giveaways and anything like that that may exist at, like, the AMC, so we went to the AMC, which is a little bit further. Get there, uh, we don't have to go to, like, the ticket thing because I already have the tickets purchased. I just need to the QR codes on my phone, all that jazz. So I go to the guy that scans the QR codes, and he scans it, and he's like, "That says no tickets." And I was like, "Well, you can see right here, it says confirmation number." It says, all the different things, right? It has, like, my old AMC number and all this stuff. It says 2 tickets. Like, he scanned it, like, 3 or 4 times. He's like, "Well, let me try it a couple more times." Nothing. He's like, "Well, I can see that it's there, so if it doesn't work, I'll just let you in anyways." I'm like, "Okay, this is weird." Like, I don't know why it's not scanning. And then we get our stuff and we're supposed to be in theater one, showtime's 4 o'clock. We get our snacks and whatnot. We start walking into theater one and we realized that, oh, we must be here too early because it's still showing the Mandalorian movie. And I was like, and then I was checking my watch or I don't have a watch. I was checking my phone and I was like, well, it's kind of late for a film to still be going on beforehand because we were there like at 3:45 ish, 3:40, and the film's supposed to start at 4. I'm like, that's kind of weird. And then I look at my tickets again because I was like, maybe we're at the wrong auditorium. I'm like, no, it says 1. And then I look a little bit closer and it's for next Sunday, not this
Oh
Sunday.
no.
And I was like, why would it come up next Sunday? Like I for sure was looking for the 7th. Like,
Yeah.
how could that? I don't know if it just like scrolled on me and I didn't realize it, or when I went to pick it, it adjusted. Because when I brought it up today afterwards, when I was trying to figure out how to fix this, when I brought the AMC site up again, it also defaulted to next Sunday. And I was like, so I went back to the guy that was scanning. I'm like, well, I figured out why it wouldn't scan. Like my tickets are for next Sunday. But I looked at today and there's a showing at 4:15. Can we just go into that one? And he's like, well, no, because you picked your seats and there might be somebody else in those seats. So then I had to go back to the ticket desk. They had to return my first 2 tickets, put them on a gift card, buy me 2 tickets for today's, pay for it with the gift card, and then get there. And meanwhile, like the clock's ticking, right? Like it's getting closer
Yeah.
to 4:15.
Yeah. Oh
I'm
no.
like, I'm like, how did any of this happen? Like I am such like the old man that doesn't know what I'm doing. And now I've talked to like multiple people that think I'm crazy because I'm like, I don't know why it won't scan my tickets and all this other jazz. But we got to the right theater, which was theater number 2 instead of theater number 1. So then we're not even thinking at all because now we're like feeling like we're against the time, right? Like it's getting
Yeah.
close to 4ish and the movie starts at 4:15. So we just like grab our stuff, go in. There's like a few people seated here and there, and we sit down and like the credits were rolling for the previous film, which was The Masters of the Universe. And so then an end credit sequence comes up.
No.
and, and I like had to quickly like shut my ears and my eyes and whatnot.
Yeah.
And Amanda watched, but I couldn't hear or see anything. I saw like the first glimpse, and that was it. And I'm like, what? This is just a train wreck already. Like I can't wait to see this movie now. So
Jeez.
it was an interesting theater experience. I did get the Skeletor head popcorn bucket. They were sold out of the Power Sword and the Castle Grayskull thing, and I know AMC was doing like some sort of like tin poster type thing. I think they had sold out of that or whatever, so it wasn't that big a deal. But the Skeletor head was fine. That was enough for me to like make up for it a little bit. And my wife got a like we were debating on whether we were gonna have the popcorn in it or not,
Yeah.
and she was very excited about eating out of the Skeletor head, so she did that, which worked out though because then we dumped the whole bucket and we were able to layer in like the butter and the salt and whatever into the Skeletor head, and then we just took the bucket back up and got a refill on it, and I had the bucket and she had the Skeletor head, so I guess that worked out. But so yeah, it was quite the experience. Before we get into any thoughts of the movie, was yours a little bit more smooth sailing?
Yeah, it was, but it's funny that that happened to you because that didn't happen to me, but I had a similar experience when I went to see Mandalorian Grogu with my oldest son. We went the Friday it opened, and similar, like it was a theater where it's at a Regal, and for some reason, like you actually, I bought my tickets ahead of time,
Mhm.
and you go up and actually like you get them scanned at the concessions. I think it's
Yeah.
probably just to like so that way you're there and you'll want to buy concessions while you're there, which of course we're gonna do.
Right.
So we do that, get our concessions. Or like, and a similar issue where it's like he's having difficulty, like he's like scanning it. It's like having trouble. He's like, oh, I don't know, this thing doesn't scan all the time. And eventually, whatever. He's like, I don't know, I'll just put it in manually. And like he asked me what I'm seeing. I'm like, I'm seeing Mandalorian Grogu and Theater One or whatever. He's like, okay, and he prints it out and goes. So go in, and it's like it's not a super busy theater.
Mhm.
But anyway, we walk over, go in, and it's like a 7 o'clock showing, and we walk in at 7 because I usually try to walk in later with the kids because it's
I get
usually
it.
like 30 minutes of previews,
Yeah.
like plus trailer. So like seven's really 7:30. So I try to like
Right.
we get in when it's like like when it's so we're like maybe get 15 minutes of previews. But it's like no one's there. Nothing started yet. Like none of the pre-show. I'm like, this is weird. So I'm like, all right. So And and as we're walking in too, my son's like the little post on the outside. He's like, "Why does it show?" I forget what movie. I'm like, I don't know. It's probably. I think that's just the advertisement. And I walk back out, and the guy's like, I'm like, "Is this showing Mandalorian Grogu?" He's like, "No, this is the theater's actually broken." I'm like, my ticket says Theater One though." He's like, "I don't know why that is." I'm like, "It's like you got to talk to our manager." So I'm like, "All right." So I go to our manager and show her the tickets. And she's like, "Oh, this is for a different theater." And I'm like, "What?" I bought it for a different Regal by
Oh.
accident. So and it was weird because like I wouldn't get I always get from that one,
Mm-hmm.
but for some reason when I went into the app that time, like it defaulted to a different one other than my local one. I
The
don't know
apps
if it
were
was
screwing with us.
yeah. So I was like, I'm stupid. But luckily it was easy to fix. He just refunded it
Yeah.
and similar issue, there was still tickets available to the showing that was like my son was really worried. He's like, "Oh no, there's not going to be tickets." But like there was a showing that was like 15 minutes, like so it worked
Yeah.
out fine. But I was like, "Oh wow!" So we're in other words, we're both old and we don't know how to use technology.
I guess
So
there was definitely a moment of like miniature panic in me that was like,
yeah,
we've already dropped off our daughter at the grandparents' house to babysit. Like,
yeah.
I'm gonna check and there's gonna be no movie showing for the rest of the night, or not until like 6 or something like that, and it's gonna be like a disaster. But
Did you
it
were
was,
you able to
and
get your
we
seats that you normally get, or did you have to get like a remote?
no, so then this theater, I guess the entire back row exists, and then the next row only goes like halfway. So there's
Mm,
like, we were in the second row that was just like a half of a row, and I guess it was next to like, I'm assuming some handicap spaces and things of that nature. So we did have people behind us, but it was fine. It was
yeah,
as good as it could be. It was better than like having to sit front row because that would have driven me bananas. So
yeah, nice.
I'm not a front row sitter at the movie theaters for sure, and
Oh yeah,
I don't think Amanda can. I think that would make her sick, from like a motion standpoint or something like that. So it all worked out in the end. We got to see the film. It was just
yeah.
15 minutes later, and then like I said, I don't know. I have my timing wrong because I just assumed that because it was only 15 minutes till the showtime that it was good to go into the
That is
theater.
weird though,
And
because that is usually like 15 minutes. It's still showing the other one. That is cutting it really close. Because
yeah,
usually, like that's usually when you go in. So that's strange.
right.
Strange that it's that like that their show times are so truncated like that. That's
The
odd.
other strange thing about this theater was that there was nothing on the outside. Like, it just has a little thing at the top of the door that says 1, and then
Yeah,
2 and 3 and 4. There was no, like, thing with the, like, the digital words, like the
Hmm.
marquee type thing. There was no pictures. There was no sign of what any of, because at first when I was like, "Oh, there's just a 4:15 one, we'll just walk and sit into that one." But
yeah,
I had no way to figure out what auditorium it was playing in, so I was like, "I don't we can't just walk into all of them. There's, like, 16 theaters here," so
yeah.
that's what made me had to go back to the ticket person and be
Nice.
like, I was like, at first I was just like, "What auditorium is it? We'll just go into that one." He's like, "No, that doesn't work." I'm like, "Well, you make a good point." So,
Yeah, but
nonetheless,
yeah, but my trip to Masters Universe was a lot smoother. We did go to AMC as well. I also did get a Buckethead. We did put popcorn in it.
did you get the
You know,
Skeletor one?
I did. It was the only one they had. They didn't have any
Does
other.
yours the lights on the eyes work?
They do.
Okay. Ours did not come on, so we gotta look into it. I don't know if the batteries weren't working or what, but, like, we couldn't
I
get the
didn't.
lights to turn on.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was a thing until like my I'm like, my son figured it out. I'm like, I didn't know those were lighting up, so that's
Yeah,
cool.
she was like, on the picture it says that there shows lights, and she's like, it literally says above it that it's a lighted head, and I'm like, "Yeah, you have to pull its, like, jaw out," and so we pulled it out and pulled the tab for the battery and turned it on, and then, like, nothing happened. It's like,
Did you click the nose? You got to click the nose and it turns on.
that's what it is then. She'll be happy when I figure that out, or
Yeah.
when you figured
So
it out for me. So,
no, I didn't figure
that
it out. My oldest son did. Again, I'm
that's what
not good with
that's what
technology.
it takes. We're too old, Dan.
you need
Dang it.
you need an 11-year-old.
Too
But
old
no,
for this.
I went with both my kids. Because I wasn't sure. So my 11-year-old and my 6-year-old, actually now 7, so 11 and 7,
Yeah.
both went with me. So we actually went to the IMAX. It's not real
Oh, wow.
IMAX. It's the FOMAX because
Okay.
it wasn't really like I had to see it in IMAX. It was more so
Right.
that it was the showing because it was the earliest showing
Makes sense.
of the day. So it was like we kind of worked out but yeah.
She did.
So
My daughter did watch an episode of the Filmation series He-Man the night before, and she actually laughed and she enjoyed it. But I was pretty convinced that this would scare her, so I was like,
yeah, I was worried about my youngest because like We've seen some things, but nothing like to this extent. He's never watched
Mhm.
any He-Man before. Like neither of them have. So it
Okay,
was going. They saw the trailers. That was it.
gotcha. Well, if they liked it, I would suggest going to the 2002 series next for them. It's probably uh, more their speed, or the Netflix Kevin Smith one would both be probably decent. And the Kevin Smith one's a little bit more mature. The 2002 one's definitely more mature than the Filmation one, but it's still kid friendly. So,
Yeah,
um,
that was the
so
Netflix one, right? The Kevin Smith one.
yeah, there's two of them. There's one that Kevin Smith did, and then there's one that's a lot more geared towards younger audiences that I have not really seen much of. They both kind
Nice.
of came out simultaneously.
All right, well,
All
so the
right.
question is, with this being your most anticipated, you you went through all the rigmarole. You saw the ending before the beginning. What did you actually think of the movie?
So it was one of those interesting. Obviously, like I said, I've been waiting decades for it. It was my most anticipated film of the year, but I also went in without very high expectations, right? Like it
Yeah.
was one that like I know what the cartoon is, I know what the 1987 film was, and it didn't get good reviews, obviously, in 1987.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think there's some stuff I really enjoy about it, and it just kind of can't be fun and whatever. It's like perfect 80s like sci-fi fantasy film for me, but I definitely went in with like not thinking this was going to be the end all be all, but I also went in like I guess cautiously optimistic. Like Travis Knight's attached. I've been
Mhm.
Bumblebee is probably my favorite of the modern Transformer movies, and obviously I really liked his work with the animation of like Kubo and the Two Strings and things that he's done. So I was like cautiously optimistic about it. I watched the trailer originally, but other than that, I've basically stayed away. Like I knew a lot of people were going to be seeing it first. A lot of people in my like algorithms from Facebook and Twitter and things like that come up because it's kind of I've done a lot of stuff in this universe and kind of in that geek world. So like a lot of people were getting like obviously Pixel Dan got to go to the premiere in Hollywood and he was on set at one point, and so I'm kind of living vicariously through all those folks. But I once it was like the movie started and I knew all the embargoes were lifted, I had stayed away. I was like, I'm not going to see anything. Want to go in with his open mind and nothing spoiled and whatnot. So I will say that my general like overall thought coming out of the film, and this is very fresh. Like usually I have more time to digest the films, but I literally this film ended like 3 hours ago. So my first reaction was that I'm generally positive on the film. There was a lot that I liked, but it's not perfect. Like, not that anything would be perfect, but there was definitely some things that I felt like weren't necessary or some things that I kind of wish they hadn't done. But that didn't take away from just being able to like sit back, enjoy a lot of the things that I originally fell in love with the franchise from when I was, 5 to 10 years old, playing with the toys and watching the cartoon, and, I saw the 1987 film in theater. I think it was the first it might have been the second film that I ever saw in theaters, but it was one of the first few. So, general positive, a lot of nostalgia things, a lot of nods to the Filmation series, a lot of nods to the live action film. There's even a couple nods to the 2002 series and the Kevin Smith series, and a lot of things where I appreciated what they were going for, and I think Travis Knight overall handled it well. I think there's a few things that I would change to make it even a little bit better, but I'm I would definitely be up for more of these. It doesn't seem like it's doing super well in the box office, so I don't know if we'll get that chance, but I also think that unlike some films, the success of this and the ability to possibly have sequels does not depend 100% on the box office. Like, it's bringing in a lot of other merchandise, it's bringing in toy sales and stuff like that, so it really depends on how the whole picture does, like, the whole kit and caboodle versus just the film, but I worry because there's a bunch of heavy hitters about to hit the theaters here in the next couple weeks, so I don't think it's gonna be able to have as much legs, but generally, I've heard mostly positive stuff from everybody I kind of am associated with or that would come across my feed, and I kind of agree with most of that. So, general positive thoughts, I can get into more details in a little bit, but, what was your kinda your first reaction?
Yeah, so I'm going into this, like I said, I missed He-Man growing up. I didn't have any toys and really watched the cartoon and even the newer stuff. So I was kind of going in not knowing much. I don't know if I watched the original live action. If I have, it's I don't remember much of it. So, but I was interested because I thought the trailers actually looked promising, and a lot also because of Travis Knight. Like I did like Bumblebee, like you mentioned. Really loved Kubo and the Two Strings. It seemed like a good choice for this, and the cast honestly didn't. The only person I knew from the cast like going in was Idris Elba. I didn't really know anyone else, but I thought it was really entertaining. Like my kids both really enjoyed it. Did scare my youngest a little bit at times. They were like,
Yeah.
especially in like the little beginning, the opening action sequence. He was,
Hmm.
I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make this through because he was like covering his eyes and like he was like, and he was, but he kind of settled in. He was fine. So we were able to make it through all the way. But that it was able to kind of blend like it did feel like a live action cartoon, but not necessarily in a bad way,
Hmm.
where it is self aware without being a self parody. Like
Yeah.
you could almost, I could think some people would watch this and feel like there's like the Marvelization of it in a bit, where there's a lot of comedy within the action. And there is that, but I do think it's more so understanding that like the ridiculous nature of all this. It kind of make the way it introduces the names of the characters. For example, I
Hmm.
was curious like how it would do that, like, and you don't realize at first what it does, and we'll get into that in spoilers because I think that's part of the fun
Yeah.
with it all. I thought the casting, like not knowing, like I said, like the main star of this Nicholas, I don't know how to pronounce his last
Palpatine.
name, Constantine. I kind of think it's his performance here to me is like akin to in a bit like Chris Hemsworth in Thor, where he's trying to work with a concept that is a bit ludicrous, but he has both the comedic ability as well as the ability to sell the action, which is not easy to do. He's very charismatic. He has the comedic timing, and has a little bit of the romance there as well, even though that's played very light. So I thought he held his own, which was not an easy part to play, and great villain. Like one of the Skeletor to me steals the show. Like I think he if I don't know how much of it is Jared Leto, how much of it is the visual effects and sound effects, but
Right.
man, like you walk away from this thinking, man, Skeletor is a great villain. And then the surrounding cast is pretty good. Idris Elba gets his time to shine, and some of the other actors as well. They're there. It's fun and it's enjoyable. Special effects, I think, make sense. Sometimes they're, I think, purposely bad. If and not like in the idea of like being kind of like cheesy '80s. In a
Hmm.
way, it sounds amazing. The score is great, like the synth '80s score. It leans into that in a lot of ways, and it's sad that it's not getting like a better uh, overall box office. And I think it perhaps a reason for that. I think a fundamental mistake with this is that it could have, I think, done better if it leaned into maybe even being like a family film a bit more in the
Yeah.
sense of like I like obviously didn't have an issue taking my kids to it, but I know there's people who if it's PG-13, they're not taking a kid that's under 13, and I think if anything like this, it's a movie based upon an '80s cartoon. And I don't know why it was PG-13, but my guess is probably because there is some strong language. And
Yeah.
not to sound like a narc or anything, but I think you could remove it and you don't lose anything, and it doesn't really add anything. And I think it's simply there because I think the PG rating studios are scared by because they're like, well, teenagers won't go, but I don't think teenagers care about He-Man anyways. So I don't know. I
And
think that
I don't know if the same rules exist as back in the day. There was a lot of kids movies or kind of similar stuff to this that would throw in a cuss word or a swear word, to
yeah,
get the PG rating because they didn't want the G rating because before there was restraints put on your film as far as when it could be shown and how,
yeah.
what time of day and all that kind of stuff if you were G compared to if you were PG. So they would do that to get like the better rating. I don't know if that's a thing anymore and that's why they do that still or what, but I do agree because I think, and I was thinking about this a lot on the way home from the theater, was why certain films do well and why certain films don't. And like, I, I don't think it's a statement about He-Man or a statement about that fandom or anything like that. It's more so like animated films work because they work for the whole family, right?
Yeah.
And because when you're looking for something to take your kids to, there's usually only one choice at the theater at a time, occasionally
Mhm.
two. Like there's usually not like a plethora, but when you get it where you're more of a PG-13 or more of a, a wider audience, now you're competing against everything, right? Because it's not just one animated film and that's your only choice, or one to get maybe two options. Like you have 6, 8 options at the movies at any time. And in order to be successful, you still have to somewhat like reach all the different audiences, and you're never going to do that. m- You're usually never not going to do that with something like this
Mhm.
because it's not something that the female audience is going to necessarily gravitate towards. And like you're saying, it's not 100% what the younger child, like you're not going to take your kids to it maybe. So I think the one that like bucks the trend, because I was thinking about that, like going back, and there's a lot of cases like this where the film doesn't do as good for similar reasons. And if you're not appealing or having a kind of that broad appeal to all of the different demographics, I think you're really in trouble, except for it seems like for some reason Transformers was able to do that. And I
Yeah.
don't, you know what I mean? Like I get like sometimes it's a big production where like the Pirates of the Caribbean is able to do that, Star Wars is able to do that, Harry Potter is able to do that. They have like a much bigger fandom, right? Like built in, and Harry Potter's fandom does include a lot of, of the female audience as well. There's not many just guy centric nostalgia based things like that can work on a wider scale. I don't know how Transformers was able to do it like they did, but I think that's part of it where it's not like everybody I know that grew up with this is going or taking their kids to it,
Mhm.
but that's not enough to get like to the level that you need to in our day and age to be like a box office success. You have to have everybody going, and what's going to like bring everybody out, and it's not going to be this, I guess, is like the lesson maybe. I don't know.
I think Transformers also benefited from having Michael Bay, who at that time was like a
Mhm.
bankable name. Like he did The Rock and Bad Boys, so his name drew money. Like I think
Yeah.
that certainly helped. And I think also it's a concept that's like an easier sell because it's like, oh, these things transform. Like these are it's a big action set piece, like big robots fighting, and I
And
think
it was
like
something that had never been like, how are they gonna pull this off on the big screen? Like, how are they
yeah.
gonna make cars turn into robots? Like,
And I think it looked a bit more real world in a way,
mhm,
where this clearly looked more fantastical. Like they're wearing the same
yeah,
costumes that they do in from what I can tell in
mostly,
a lot of
yeah.
ways. So I think that's probably potentially why it did well. Plus, it's a whole different landscape of movies, and I think too, I think Transformers I think stayed in the. I think you like you mentioned, like, I probably had a fandom that was a bit larger and stayed
Mhm,
within, had many more incarnations that were successful compared to He-Man, where like you mentioned, like some of the cartoons and things got canceled. It didn't like
right,
it was really popular, but I don't think it ever had that apex that it did
right.
before. So
And the reason that the toys are still on the shelves is mostly for the older collectors. Like,
yeah,
it's not necessarily a toy line that's surviving off of young people buying them, right?
yeah,
Like, maybe this movie line will do okay, I don't know. We'll see. There is obviously a lot that's I was surprised because of just the sheer amount of marketing. I don't know if I've seen a film marketed as intensely as this one in a long time. So I was
yeah.
thinking that like, man, they really put the marketing behind this. Is it going to do well if it gets good word of mouth? It is getting good word of mouth, like basically, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it's making quite as much. Plus, it was expensive as I'll get out to make, so that doesn't
Yeah. I
that
probably
doesn't
it'll,
help either.
it'll probably do great when it gets on. And it's it's tough. It's hard to know why something does great and something
A-
doesn't.
Apparently, the Amazon studio, though, who obviously Amazon MGM is who put this out, and Mattel, they've already issued a statement that was like, I basically like, yeah, everybody's downing it because it's not making a bunch of money, but they were like, we're actually totally fine with how it's doing. They're like, this is just part of bringing this franchise to the public and raising awareness, and it's part of a longer multifaceted like plan that involves more than just the movie. So I guess they're not necessarily down on it, not like, you know, beating down the doors from a box office standpoint. So maybe there's still hope. I don't know. I would like to see another one at least.
Yeah, maybe if they do, the next one will. I don't. Not that it hopefully goes direct to streaming, but maybe there's who
Yeah,
knows what their direction is, and maybe they understand like this will do this well, and I'll get more play on Prime, and then maybe the sequel will do even better. Who
right.
There's possibilities there. It's hard to tell,
Yeah, what else I could tie into it? Yeah.
but yeah. Do you want? So, but yeah, I think overall, like you're a He-Man fan. You went in hoping with uh, hoping it did well, and it generally meant you had a good time. I went in not being a fan of He-Man and enjoyed it a great deal as well as my kids did. So like I
Yeah, I was
said,
gonna
if
ask you
you
how the kids liked it.
they both did. My youngest certainly, I think it was a bit long for him. There
Yeah,
were
for sure.
certainly times by the end where he's like, "How much longer is this?" But like once there was like when it gets a little bit slow and it was a bit like I was like I think because it's long. I think that's my biggest criticism. I think it could have cut out a good amount. Like this movie did not need to be as long as it is. I think there's like a perfect like 90-hour 45-minute version of this film where they kind of focus on some
Yeah.
of the key elements, and maybe there's I think some scenes that could have been
Uh-huh.
slimmed down or completely removed, and you would have been a-okay. And again, my idea, like I think you would have probably done better too, and then maybe you would have been better off because you would have gotten to a theater where the ending was showing already. uh, but but yeah,
Yeah, for
like I
sure.
said, it's not like gonna be my favorite movie of the year, but I'm generally glad I went to enjoy it, and it is one I could see myself like going back. It's like my kids enjoyed it, liked it, but it's also I can always tell how much they like a movie because we're like, hey, you like it? Like, yeah, we had a good time, we enjoyed it, but they also aren't talking about it that much compared to like my son when we went to see Mandalorian Grogu, and he was talking about it the whole time, and then like
Yeah.
watching videos about it and stuff like that. It hasn't had that impact on it, but
Got
maybe
it.
if we watch it again, perhaps so. You know,
Yeah, I think you pointed on a couple things that are non-spoiler that I can talk about too. Like I do
okay.
agree with you. I think the cast is well done, well put together. I think the performances are. I was a little worried about a couple of them, which I was skeptical of Alison Brie as Eva Lynn.
Hmm.
For some reason, I just didn't know if I liked the look, and I didn't know if it like fit for me. Obviously, Jared Leto was always a question mark, so he comes with some baggage and things like that. So, but none of them really bothered me at all. Like I think they all performed the roles rather well, and that was a nice surprise that I didn't get hung up on any of those. I thought Camila Mendez was phenomenal as Tila. Like, I thought she was a highlight because Tila's been a character that hasn't like the cartoon version of Tila is annoying.
Yeah,
Like, it's not one of the best cartoon characters, and it's always been one of my least favorite characters in the franchise, and I actually quite enjoyed her character in this, so, like, that was nice. I think the action sequences, for the most part, were done really well. I think there's, an opening big time action-packed sequence, and then it seemed like they were fairly well paced throughout. There's, a couple other ones throughout, and then obviously a few showdowns between a few different characters that we'll get into. But Man at Arms is involved with one, and He Man's involved with a couple. And I thought the action was done well. There was a few different techniques, especially in that last one, that I could see maybe not working for everybody, but
hmm
I generally enjoyed the action. I am not a soundtrack or a music person when it comes to my films. I do love music, but I'm not someone that usually like focuses in on it or really notices it as much in films. But I generally enjoyed the soundtrack and the musical score and the ways that they were able to weave in some of the classic themes and different things like that. It definitely at one point had kind of like a Gardens of the Galaxy type moment, or like a Star Trek, the more modern one where they, I think the Star Trek one uses what Beastie Boys, and Guardians of the Galaxy
yeah,
uses a bunch of songs. Like they had that moment as well, which was fine. Like I thought the music was well done. So I enjoyed that. One thing that is more of a nitpicky thing for me, just as someone that really enjoys the franchise, that always bothers me in films like this, is I get it if you're kind of going back to a franchise, or you're rebooting or making something off of a franchise, there are at times where you need more numbers than what you had. So like I don't mind having like these nameless, faceless like foot soldiers or stormtroopers, like that type of thing, like we see in Star Wars, or like obviously Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles just works that in. There's always foot soldiers, so you always kind of have that. This didn't really exist in the He-Man world, but I don't mind that you need bigger armies. So like that part's fine. It always bugs me a little bit though when you have like an abundance of characters to choose from. Like there's always this need that they feel to like create their own characters that are like just specific for this movie. And I don't know why that bothers me, but it does. But they do it in every franchise for it seems like all eternity. Like they did it in the 1987 film. They did it in the Transformers films. Like that's just something they do, but it does bother me when there's like you had like dozens of characters to choose from that could have played that role. Like why create a new one? So that's just the nitpicky fan of me. Like there's a female in this film called uh what was her name? Diane? Deanne? Who's like a bully to a young Adam, and then she continues to like that's a completely made up character, never existed in any of the franchise ever before that. And I get maybe you needed like another like quote unquote human type character, but it's stuff like that where it's like we couldn't have put somebody else in there, or like there's some different like villains and creatures that are like, who is that supposed to be somebody I know? Because it has me guessing that I'm like, is it a character I'm supposed to know that just doesn't quite look like the character I'm used to, or is it
Yeah.
just a completely made up character? And there's a few of those. I mean, they do a good job of sprinkling in a lot of like more obscure characters from the cartoon and from the fan and franchise. Like there's Goat Man and there's Pig Boy and there's like some of these characters that had really super minor parts that they get some time to shine here. So like that's cool. But there's some of the other ones where I'm just like, I wish I could have seen more of the characters that I knew versus like a completely made up one. But those are just
Yeah.
like minor non-spoiler nitpicks I have. Is there anything else from a non-spoiler standpoint that you either liked or didn't like?
Uh, Trying to think regarding. It's funny because as I was watching this is how much I didn't know. I'm like, I was waiting for the thing to be revealed that Camila Mendez's character was She-Ra. I'm like, oh, is she gonna become She-Ra? Is that like her character? I didn't realize. I didn't know Tila was an actual character because I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't actually watch the show because I'm like, there's a there's a female in He-Man and that's She-Ra, but apparently there's more. So I had no idea. No, I mean, trying to think of nitpick. Like I said, I do think, uh, like I mentioned, I think generally, if anything, I think it could be cut down a bit. There are a lot of characters, but I never feel like it is generally. I mean, it is He-Man story, so
Hmm.
it never feels like it gets away from that too much. Um, but and I do think it can have its cake and eat it too a bit in the sense, like I mentioned, where there are times where the special effects are a bit shaky, but I'm like, is that the point here? Because it's
Right.
kind of echoing the 80 series, so it works. But I also it is weird sometimes with I mentioned how it's like self aware but not a self parody. When it does that at first, like it's a bit weird because like you're in this tense action sequence, and then it kind of like has a joke. I think that the first time that it happens is I think from what I can remember is in the opening action sequence where have all this tense battles. It's all going on, and then Skeletor is like doing his like laughing, and like he makes a joke, and it kind of comes out of nowhere in a bit. Like he's like basically making a joke about like him laughing all the time. I can't remember exact context, but
Yeah.
it becomes very like comedic for a moment. And that was like weird at first. Like so, like some of those things I think could throw some people off because the tonal shifts do happen
Yeah.
pretty
It's
pretty
it's
pretty rapidly, and sometimes I think maybe it could go a bit too far with it, but generally I thought it was a good way of being able to like recognize like this is a bit ridiculous, but also
right.
not, but also still kind of keeping it straight in a way. I don't know. It was a very tight rope that it was able to walk, and it maybe didn't always land it, but more often than not it did.
Yeah, that was something that I was very curious going into it because obviously it's trying to show reverence to a lot of different stuff that came before it, I guess is the best way to put
Hmm.
it. Like it's trying to homage or be referential to some of the stuff and the thing is with all of those series, they all have a lot of different tones, right? Like the
Yeah.
Kevin Smith series is very serious. Like it's more for adults. Like the 1987 film was much more no nonsense and less
Hmm.
comedic, whereas the series that it was based off of, the Filmation cartoon, the original one, was very campy, right? It was like very
Yeah.
cheesy, very campy. Like Skeletor is oftentimes calling his minions names and laughing, and there's a lot of that aspect. There's a character that's not really too present in this film that brings a lot of comedic relief to the original one. So I was curious like how they were going to balance all the different series and all the different tones of that. And I knew that they were going to do a lot that was more so based on the original Filmation series, but then it was like, well, how do you do that? And if you do that, do you just make like the straight comedy in some respects, or do you blend it with like the serious tones and some of the dramatic and the action and stuff? So I was curious how they were going to handle all those tonal shifts. I don't mind. I could see it jarring for for some, especially those not used to the world.
Hmm.
I didn't find it jarring to me as far as the fact that they were interjecting the comedy and then going back to action and then having serious
Hmm.
moments all kind of intermixed. The only part I found jarring was how far they went with some of it. Like
Yeah.
I know we're talking about kind of like walking that tightrope, and I think for the most part they did, but there was a few things where I felt like, okay, like you can be self-aware, but like you're saying, like let's not parody it to a certain point. Like I feel like with the naming, like the way they do that at first, I get, and some of the stuff, especially towards the end, there's a like some name reveals at the end that like I totally get, and I think that's a clever way to do it because the naming of these characters is silly, right? Like the name
Hmm.
of these toys and these characters from the original series is a lot of them are kind of ridiculous. So I like that they kind of make mention of that, but there was two characters and one specifically that they probably beat into the ground a little bit too much. So that part was like, okay, like you've made the joke, I don't need the joke 6 times.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the other thing that my wife kept looking at me was like, I don't know, I get you're trying to like, and maybe this is just the old man in me and I'm not in tune with like a younger audience and maybe that's geared towards them, but the number of sexual innuendo jokes in here
Oh, there was a lot. Yeah.
was like every time it happened, she looked at me and she was like, why? Like, what are they doing? Like, why did they do that? Or why did they say that? Like, this is something that we're supposed to be feeling good taking our kids to, right? Like,
Yeah.
dads that grew up with this are wanting to take their sons to it. And like, I don't want to have to explain any of those jokes to any kids. You know what I mean? Like, or attempt at jokes. So I was like, the sexual innuendos I could have done without, and I maybe that makes me like a square or whatever phrase that people call old people that are like not willing to kind of go that route. But I guess in a He-Man movie, I don't need talking about things that are hanging between muscular thighs and um, some of the other word choices that they use.
Yeah, that was that one was like I'm like, okay, you just that was pretty explicit
Right.
there. So I was like, okay. Um yeah, that one was a little bit surprising, but I think it was perhaps because it was such a chaotic sequence that they thought they could kind of get away with it, I guess. I don't
I
know.
mean, the Transformers did it too. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, they had some, parts hanging from parts that.
Yeah, and I would say at least there was it wasn't somehow wasn't as blatant as Transformers, but it was getting
Yeah.
close. So
Yeah. And the other thing that I was worried going into this, and this is not really spoiler territory, but I always worry about the Earth versus the, in this case, Eternia. Like,
yeah.
I especially when it comes to this, because the 1987 film spent majority of their time on Earth, and it was one of the biggest things that people kind of were upset about. And felt like, it wasn't really a He-Man movie because it spent so much time on Earth, and Transformers has done that. That they've had a lot of critiques that they spend so much time on Earth versus Cybertron and things of that nature. So I was worried because obviously you see in the trailers that there is going to be an Earth factor. I wasn't up in arms of it because I did know that the Queen her storyline in the original cartoon is that she is from Earth, like, so there is a connection there that's not just completely made up. But I was kind of curious how much time they're going to spend on Earth and things of that nature. I thought they did that well. I thought they, they go there, they do what they need to do, and then they basically immediately spend a majority of the film in Eternia. That being said, when you're talking about kind of shrinking down the film a little bit or cutting some minutes off, like maybe it's too easy, but there is, even though they don't spend a whole lot of time on Earth, there was some of that I didn't need. Like, you can remove his roommate from the film, it doesn't affect anything. Like, in my
Yeah.
mind, like, that character could disappear and nothing is gonna be either better or worse for it. Like, I get some of the HR angle and his job on Earth. I think maybe at times they might have gone a little bit too far with that when he's always trying to have, like, talking points with all the people on Eternia to, like, get them from an HR standpoint to, like, back up what he's doing. Like,
Yeah.
some of that I could have done without. So I feel like there were some easy, like, minutes here and there that could have been shaved on that time, but overall, I did appreciate, like, the ratio of Eternia to Earth myself.
Yeah, I was a little worried about that too. Like when you get to Earth, it's like, oh no, is it gonna be a kid at Earth? He like a family finds him. It's like how long is it gonna be until
Mhm.
he gets to Earth? And I was also worried like how long. I was like, oh, is he not gonna be He-Man until like the last battle? Like that was also a concern of mine as well. Luckily, that's not the case. So I
Right.
thought we got enough He-Man in the He-Man movie as well. So
Yes. So, Dan, should we get into some
yeah, let's get
more?
into spoilers, sir.
All right. So that's your warning. If you haven't seen the movie, you should probably stop the record now and come back and listen after you've seen it. So we are going to get into some spoilers. So
So
where should we start, Dan?
So you mentioned the character that they brought in that's not from the movie. Is that like the monster that goes to Earth? Is that the one you're talking about? I
No,
assume. Or...
beasts. Most of them are exist. Like, most of the ones that get main parts are characters from the series. So you
Okay.
get, like, Beastman is the one that comes to Earth, like, that's
Okay.
straight out of the cartoon. Trapjaw, who has the main fight with Man-at-Arms, is straight from the movie. You get a little bit of Triclops, you don't get a lot of, like, time with him, and I don't know if he hardly might have a few lines, but he's the one with the eyes that change, like, that's from the
Yeah.
movie. Spikor is, like, a little bit less of a known, not less known, but he's less centered in the cartoon, but he gets quite a bit of time in this one with all the different purple spikes that he keeps getting stuck on. And then we
Hmm.
have Goatman and Pigboy, who are very obscure characters that they kind of got in here. One of those has, like, the red with the horns coming out that He-Man tears off at one point, and Pigboy is kind of the one that wakes up Skeletor. So those guys get some minor roles. Obviously, Evil Lynn is main as well. It's more so like the ones, especially from the master standpoint, where they are multiple times where they're in, like, for example, when they're in Snake Mountain and in the jail dungeon and everybody's captured, Adam's been thrown in there, we have Man at Arms and Tila in there, the Queen's in there. And then you have, like, a variety of characters that he's, like, trying to motivate to have this moment. And I would say 80% of them are just, like, nonsense, made up, like, random characters, which I get you're gonna have some of that, but I was like, "Oh, there was a chance to kind of throw some Easter eggs in and have, like, a few characters that they didn't need to talk, they didn't need to be named, but, like, have some of
Hmm.
those in the background, so to speak." And then that Royal Guard, the female that was, like, along with Tila and Adam when they were young, like, that was obviously completely made up character for this film, so it was just more of those kind of moments, like, there's times where he's like, and whatever that is, when he points to the alien being or
Yeah.
whatever, which was from the trailer, like, they could have made that a real character, like, I guess is kind of where I was at with some of that. It wasn't a
Okay.
major, like, nothing major. It was just, like, a minor, like, "Oh, I feel like we missed a chance to, like, have a few people in the background that, like, we would have been like, 'Oh, I know who that is,' even though maybe nobody else does." So just, like, some
And
Easter eggs, I guess, that I was like, "Oh, we missed an opportunity there." But otherwise, for the most part, the ones that they actually give time to, the ones that speak, the ones that get, like, main action sequences are all there, and all existed in the original one, and one of them was from the 1987 film, which I thought was cool because it was one of the characters that was strictly created for that film that was not from the original cartoon, and that was one of the main bad guys at the end that has, like, kinda has, like, an old looking face, and he has a hook on his hand.
Hmm.
That character was from the 1987 film, so I did think it was cool that they kind of made a nod to that as well.
I wonder if like the reason they didn't include like characters in the background was just maybe because like they don't want to waste them in that way. I
That's
don't
true.
know.
That's true. He did
Or
say that, if there was a sequel that he already knows which characters he would want and like this, that, and the other. So like I guess there is that, like, we gotta save some for potential extra movies,
yeah,
maybe.
or even like a rights thing because I know like there was
Yeah.
because obviously She-Ra does I guess this question did you saw the end credit scenes. Did you stay to watch them
So
when you actually watched the movie?
there's 3 quote unquote, there's a pre-credits, mid-credits, and end credits sequence here, and the only one that I saw before the movie started was the final one, the end credit sequence where Skeletor's, skull is being picked up by Eva Lynn. So, all I saw was the skull sitting on the ground, and then I was able to close my eyes and ears, and I didn't see the rest of that. It's a fairly
Yeah,
short sequence that's somewhat inconsequential. It's the classic, the bad guy's
yeah,
not done, and he's gonna, like, return, which is exactly what happened in the 1987 film. He gets, I can't remember what it's been a while since I saw that. He's somewhere, and he's able to, like, stick his hand up kinda like Shredder and be like, I'm you haven't seen the last of me type stuff, so that was fine. I knew nothing about the other 2 though, so those 2 were complete surprises for me, and I know one thing that a lot of folks were going into the film wondering was, will Cringer/Battle Cat talk? That was one of the big things that people were debating going into the film. Or will Cringer turn into Battle Cat? Will Orko show up because he wasn't present in any of the trailers? And will there be any references to She-Ra/Adora, He-Man's twin sister? So those are things that were like all the questions going into this, and obviously we see some of it during the movie because we do see Cringer talk immediately. That
yeah,
happens almost immediately, I think, in the first sequence or second sequence, and then we do get to see him turn into Battle Cat and all of that. So you do get that, and then obviously, like, for me, the last, I don't know, 15 minutes plus the end credit sequences is just pure nostalgia and like nods to fans. So like it made a lot of the other things that I was like, "Oh, I didn't really like that part," like, kinda disappear for that last 15 minutes was just, like, pure, like, joy. Um, so
yeah,
obviously we get Orko with the PSA in the pre-credits, which is perfect because all the He-Man cartoons always had the PSA at the end. So it was fun seeing him and seeing that and being able to, like, oh, they did pull off having him because he was one of the big complaints from the 1987 film was Orko didn't exist because I don't know if they just couldn't figure out how to do it. There's a lot of things that get blamed on technology for the 1987 film, even though Star Wars had already happened. So it's like
yeah.
a lot of this can happen. Like maybe it was a cost of it happening. So Orko doesn't
Mhm.
appear because they didn't know how to pull it off in 1987. So they created like a completely different character to be in place of Orko because Orko brought a lot of the comedy to the original cartoon. So there's a character named Gwildor in the 87 film that kind of substitutes as that comedic relief. So it was nice to see that they kind of had that little nod to Orko. And then the mid-credit scene is obviously like one that like, you know, all fanboys probably marked out for or whatever when you get to see like the sequence with Man at Arms and the Queen talking about, that she had lost hope and never seen them both. And, obviously Man at Arms says, there's still hope for her. And then we get cut to a sequence of the transition of Force Captain Adora into She-Ra standing there and right in front of a picturesque, perfect fright zone, which is where Hordak lives. So like that was all awesome, which is why we need a sequel, but we'll see. Because if they
Yeah,
do She-Ra and Hordak in a sequel, like that's everything that fans have wanted. Because She-Ra's never been on the big screen, so
yeah. And I know I know something we didn't talk about when we were not talking about spoilers, but I did like the fact that it was also trying to say something about like masculinity, what it
mhm,
means, and like seeing this guy trying to basically what does it mean to be a hero, and where
yeah,
does that come from, and it's a basic idea, but again, it's a basic idea that it's clearly self-aware of, and it does sound like a lesson you would get from an 80s cartoon, and I think that makes sense. Again, that's I think it's a way of telling that story within the context of a movie like this that works. What did you think of the Dolph Lundgren cameo?
I appreciated that. I mean, Dolph Lundgren's an interesting cat, right? Like he was
Yeah,
obviously He-Man in the original film, and during the time he did not say a whole lot of nice things about He-Man and being in that. He felt like it was in interviews it came across as if he felt like He-Man was beneath him and he didn't necessarily love doing the film and this, that, and the other. But I think over time he's changed his tune on that and like come to appreciate like what role he had in that kind of cult classic and fan favorite,
yeah.
fandom or whatever. So I did like that he showed up. I don't know, like I don't know if his advice was like that earth shattering or whatnot. Like it was good. Like obviously they make a callback later to it, and he's Dolph Lundgren, so he does Dolph Lundgren things. But like I enjoyed seeing him either way. So it was fun. What about you? Were you prepared for that?
I wasn't expecting it to be such like it to be so, be so blatant,
Hmm.
and be actually kind of like go on for as long as it did,
Yeah,
in the sense
I thought it was
because
a
we've seen
little
cameo,
lengthy.
yeah, where it's like and it's so direct, obviously, because it's like for the new guy, and it reminded me of it's not exact the same way, but when George Lazenby became James Bond,
Hmm.
and like like, his opening sequence, he makes a reference like, "Oh, this never happened to the other guy." I'm like, kind of like breaking the fourth
Yeah,
wall a bit, and like it's kind
I
of kind of what happened here.
I would prefer it if like Adam was just trying to like bench press or something,
Yeah,
and maybe he was struggling with with a set, and like somebody comes over and spots him for a second, and it's just Dolph Lundgren, and then they don't even like say anything, like
yeah,
or he's just like hey, let me help you with that, and like, or we've all been there, or something like that, and just
yeah,
like gone about his way. But it was interesting you bring up kind of like the some of the more thematic elements of what He-Man is representing, and obviously they talk a little bit about how all the champions of Grayskull prior to this were ruled by brute strength and physicality, and like how this individual, Adam, was different, and he brought more empathy and all of those other elements to it, and was why he was chosen. So I think that was good, and I think they do a decent job of they don't necessarily reference the episodes, but they show him learning some of the things that he did straight out of episodes from the original Filmation cartoon. Like
mm,
there's one of the episodes that's, I believe it's titled Problem with Power or something of that nature, is basically Adam learning that this power that he wields now, he can't just use haphazardly, right? Like there's consequences for using power with no respect for what can happen and the repercussions of that, right? Like you can't just throw a tree at something without seeing like that it's hitting a house and that there's kids inside. Or you know what I mean? Like just something
yeah,
simple like that. Like there's an episode that kind of goes into that, and it kind of shows that in he, obviously has to learn that lesson a little bit, uh I guess dramatically. And they don't spend a lot of time really like dwelling on it, but it is his action of fighting with almost no restraint that leads in a way to his father's death. Like
yeah,
he has to learn that lesson kind of on the fly right here. That's like, oh, I can't just be like crazy with it. And he has the power to use might and muscle when necessary, but I like that they show that he's not someone that wants to resort to that first. Like, yes, if my back's against the wall and I have to do what I have to do, I'm going to do it. But if not, I'm going to try to like diplomatically come to a solution or reason out with people, and, and that may come across silly a couple times in the film, but I do like that they showed a couple different layers to him versus just like this masculine man's man or whatever. And they did it in a way that I don't think is a lot of people had problems with the Kevin Smith series because they felt like the way that they kind of did the same thing was maybe extreme, and that they just really went pro Tila across the board and made Adam into someone that like barely ever turned into He-Man and kind of lost some of his power. I didn't agree with that take, but that was something that the that series got kind of railed on for. So I thought they did it a little bit more carefully here and
mm,
with a little bit more thought, I guess.
interesting. What did you think of the the final sequence, obviously with Skeletor, and we're it gets a bit weird. Like we get a lot of we get like middle management Skeletor. We get him like all those different. I felt like at times there were like scenes where I'm like I feel like they're just doing this for the gifs and like the memes because
Yes.
like just like this because this will look funny. But what did you think of that sequence where we it's a little bit like in the head of Adam or He-Man or whatever you want to call him.
I think on one side, that's probably another opportunity for them to have shaved some time off. Like I felt
Yeah.
like some of it went a little bit long with the number of different elements. Like they have Skeletor as the roommate, and they have him as the date at the restaurant, and they have him
Hmm.
as his boss, and like I don't know if we needed every one of them. At the same time, did I laugh at Skeletor being in a hooded sweatshirt and like
Yeah.
talking to whatever, and then being like the corporate guy? Like all of those sequences, I guess, were funny to see Skeletor like that, but there was that entire sequence I felt like ran a little long, and it was also brought on by like a weird choice of having He-Man get stabbed with a sword in a way that's like, I don't know if you come back from that. Like I
Well,
get that it's all mythical fantasy and how they explain it away, but part of me was like, well, that's something we've never seen before. So like it was an odd setup to that moment. And then at the same time I'm watching all of those little montage things, I'm like, what are they doing to get out of this? So I don't know, like, that whole sequence wasn't my favorite sequence, but, like, I did laugh at a couple of the Skeletor moments for sure.
yeah. I guess I appreciated at least like okay, let's try to do something that's not just him punching.
Yeah.
So so I appreciated that, but
What did
I do agree.
what did
Maybe it
you
went on for a bit. Like I'm like okay, we can maybe speed this up a
Right.
bit, but uh,
Oh, I wanted to ask you about the action, since we're kinda
mm,
talking about which leads to an action sequence right after that. Because one thing that my wife and I were talking about on our trip to pick my daughter up was, it's another one of those things, like, where are they gonna balance the tone and, like, the violence, right? Like, are they gonna go full on and have people die and show blood and have He-Man kill somebody or different things like that? Because obviously that never happened anywhere. Or are they gonna make it all more cartoon violence and things of that nature? And I think at times they did different things, right? Like there was
mhm,
a lot of cool action sequences that don't necessarily end up with any blood or death or anything like that. But then there's a couple other moments where you do see that, like, there's a few appearances of blood. You do get He-Man stabbed in the you know, impaled in the stomach or whatever you wanna call it. You do have a character that Moss Man that gets completely annihilated by Skeletor and killed. You do have King Randor killed. W and then some of the action was also treated differently. Like, you have that sequence with Man-at-Arms and Trapjaw, which is a pretty intense, I thought, well shot and executed choreographed action sequence. You do have a similar one with He-Man and Trapjaw on kind of that bridge type situation. And then you have obviously a couple with He-Man and Skeletor. And they did something different with the last one, the final one between He-Man and Skeletor, because they do all of these like slow motion, almost like comic book frame style, where it's like the slow-mo punch and then Skeletor's jaw going different ways, and like it was a completely different style that they used to shoot that last action sequence. I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying it was different. What did you think of the way they handled the different action sequences and how they treated like what level of violence we're going to show or not show at different times?
I thought I didn't have any issues with the violence. I thought it was it never felt gratuitous or to the point where it was uncomfortable even with like my kids there. Like it felt like it was
Mhm.
fine. Perhaps the where Moss gets killed, but I think sometimes that's okay.
Yeah,
It's okay to have death in movies
for
and
sure.
to showcase that within this. It's to show that like as the movie says, so, if the guy has a skull's ahead, he's probably the bad guy. So I think it demonstrated that, and I thought the action like you said, the style did vary. I thought it was it was always easy to tell what was happening.
Yes.
And it was entertaining and fast moving for the most part. I like, you had the fun sequence where like you have He-Man literally, picking up a guy and hitting him with other guys. So that was keeping it varied. And like that's kind of the hard thing too when you have a lot of people that generally have like a lot of powers that are very not similar, but like you have Ran Man. Generally, he just rams, and then as the movie points out, Fisto he fits things. So how do you kind of
17
keep
times,
it?
I think they pointed that out.
Yeah, that was that joke. They did run into the ground a bunch.
Yeah.
So, but I thought the action was overall done well. It wasn't like jaw dropping amazing or anything like that, but I thought it was effective and well lit, and I think that's also helps because it was like it wasn't overly dark, or
So nice to see.
like or grayed out or anything like that. It was bright and very clear, which is not always the case with blockbusters today.
No,
so I
especially
thought
with
that
fantasy
that
and
helped it
sci-fi.
stand out. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
they like to
So
go super dark. I appreciate it. I thought that I think you brought up a couple points. Like the lighting's good, and I think it's easy to follow. You know what's happening, even in the massive group fights. Like I don't think you completely lose track of what's happening or kind of what direction you're going and whatnot. And I thought those worked out fairly well.
yeah, and
For
it
the most part.
you get a couple. You get the foot chase sequence. You get the sequence with them flying those different ships and things like that.
Hmm.
So it. I think again, if anything, I do think it could have. Some of them did go on for a bit like long, like the flying sequence with as they're
Yeah,
trying to escape. I'm like, okay, like this, like I felt like eventually, and there's also felt like there are elements that they were gonna pay off that never really did, like him being a bad driver. Like, is that a callback to the cartoon or something like
no,
that? Because like we see him drive, and for some reason he's bad driving, and then they bring that up again, and then that never comes up again. So I thought that was going to come back, but it never did. But I didn't know if that was a reference to like
no,
the
not that I can
cartoon or something.
remember. I do like that in that one sequence. I agree, it probably went on too long, but I do like that once they are kind of crash landed and they're kind of camping out for that one point, that there's a moment where He-Man lifts up the ship or whatever for Tila to grab something that's stuck under it or whatever. I do appreciate that they reference and have He-Man reference that, hey, this is heavy. Like,
Yeah,
like, can you grab whatever you're trying to grab? Because I think oftentimes in the cartoon it came across as if everything was like light as a feather for him. And I get that he's like the strongest person on, in the universe and this, that, and the other, and he can do all this stuff. And I think they did a good job of showing that strength without making it seem like everything was weightless. So like, and having him still struggle to do some of the stuff, even though he can do it. Like obviously he grabs like the one ship with his bare hands, like the cutty, the roton, which cuts up everything on the circle. Like that's kind of a cool moment. They show his strength there. They show his strength with a lot of the fights he's in. But I do appreciate like that he made that comment that's like, hey, this is kind of heavy. Like,
yeah,
can you please get that? I appreciated that.
yeah. And I thought too was a good progression of like I mentioned. I was worried that he was like, oh man, he's not going to be He-Man to the very end. Like when he first finds the sword and he does I have the power, and like
Hmm.
my first worry too was like, oh no, you talking about them being on Earth too much. Like the thing is gonna be like that's actually a replica sword, and the
Right.
real sword is someplace else, and like something like that. But
That
luckily that
sequence
wasn't the
on
case.
Earth too with Beastman kind of coming towards him, that probably could have been shaved by a few minutes as well.
Yeah, that, that does go on a bit.
Like there's a few of
But
those sequences that are just like, okay, like we got the point, like let's move to the next, let's get from A to B.
also, I do feel like it does. Like everyone has like comedic lines, like the cops that come pick him up, like they're like making jokes, and like the
Yeah,
one
that was
female cop but is bad at it for some reason. I don't know. It's just one
yeah,
of
that
those
was
things.
weird.
He's like, yeah, you're like Highlander. It's like okay, this guy. I don't know. It was just one of those things. It's like I don't know why they have to have personalities too, but whatever. I guess
Right.
you need a joke here for something. But what I was gonna say, I thought like, I did like the progression of him learning how to become He-Man. Like
Hmm.
he seems to. It doesn't happen too slowly, but at least there is a bit of him figuring it out, and like you can see
Hmm.
him like learning how to utilize the power. Even within that sequence, I thought it went too long. You could see like eventually he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna I'm just gonna use my hands and pick this up and throw it because that's easier. Or like when he, one of my favorite lines was like, I ripped the guy's arm off and like and shot people with his friends with it or something like that. Like that is the kind of the Marvel thing of like often just like describing what you did, but in that sequence, I thought it did
There
well.
was
So
definitely a few moments where it went farther than you're used to in the cartoon, where he rips
yeah.
Crabjaw's hands off, where he rips the uh, Goatman's like horns off
Oh
before he
yeah,
stabs him and punches him off of the entire
yeah.
Snake
That's
Mountain.
probably a part of like where they got that PG-13 rating as well. So
Yeah, for sure.
uh,
But there's definitely some stuff where he's actually tearing limbs off and things of that nature where I'm like, oh, okay, we're
yeah,
going there. That's fine.
he is He-Man for sure. But
Right. What did you think of Cringer slash Battlecat?
I don't know. Like I don't think we got enough of him. Like I didn't really understand. Like he,
He definitely disappears for a long time.
and then he comes back, and then seems like he's scared. This is his thing, but he also isn't. Like I like
Yeah,
it, so it
they
was hard.
didn't.
It's hard to get a beat. Like I felt like there wasn't enough to really have an opinion because like he doesn't really have much interaction with He-Man
Yeah.
per se, and then like you're told like you're like kind of given this idea that they have this relationship, but you don't really see much of it. And then I don't feel like we ever really get a sense of what that character's personality is. Like you mentioned, like wanting armor and stuff like that, or like not wanting to fight. So you get a bit of that, but then he does anyways. So
Right. In the
I don't know.
cartoon, like in the cartoon, especially the Filmation cartoon, Cringer, like the name is appropriate, right? Like he is this like the biggest scaredy cat in the world, and like
Mm,
he never wants to be involved, and he knows whenever Adam's going to transform into He-Man that he's gonna transform Cringer into Battle Cat, and he's always trying to hide from it and like get out of it
uh,
or be like, oh, you don't need to do that. So like that's kind of the background of it, but I feel like they didn't quite know how to like balance that because we do see him as Battle Cat with the armor later, but
yeah,
we never get like a distinct separation between his two personalities. So it
no,
was kind of weird how they were trying to like balance that, and like there was times where he came across scared, but then he's still doing the fighting, but they didn't like there was no distinguishing like
no,
you're like a new character now, which is I guess there's not a huge amount of distinction between Adam and He-Man in this. I mean, obviously he becomes stronger in different uniform and gear and all that kind of stuff, but you don't get like that they're two different people as much.
yeah.
You know
I
what I
do,
mean?
yeah, I do think it's funny how they try to have to like hide his physique by like, putting him in a pink shirt that's a little baggy. So you're like, oh yeah, like he's clearly a weakling. I'm like, I can he's clearly very fit and like well put together, but whatever. So
That was a nod to the
yeah,
Filmation Adam because
yeah,
he's always in a pink shirt.
yeah.
Um,
That one I did pick up. That one I knew at
yeah,
least amount about. But I thought at least they handled like in the sense of like they were able to use the same person for both,
yes,
and they did feel like they did look like different people.
yeah.
I was kind of making a joke, but like legitimately. It did look like he got like a bigger, he became more muscular. So I don't know.
It was like he got the Farrah Fawcett hair treatment when he becomes
Yeah.
He-Man.
Yeah, what it wasn't as drastic as like Chris Evans, of course, like becoming
Yeah,
Captain America, but it was a decent transformation. But yeah,
no, totally.
anything else you wanted to talk about?
Just from a fanboy standpoint, I'll point out a couple things to look for if you're going back to try to see the movie a second time or whatever. There's a cool little brief moment that I missed on the first watch until I pulled up and watched the end credit sequences again. But the first pre-credit sequence with Orko, one of my favorite villains who is not in the movie at all appears in the background. So Merman is standing in the background for some reason. So I was like, oh,
Hmm.
Merman made it into the movie, so that was cool. Even though you'd really have to look carefully to see him. So I did enjoy that. I really enjoyed the moment where Skeletor projects himself into the clouds and kind
Oh
of
yeah,
talks. That's straight from the 1987 film as well. Skeletor in that film does something very similar. So I kind of enjoyed that and kind of how he's like telling Adam, that you need to come to Snake Mountain and bring the sword, or your parents are gonna uh, be killed. And do we believe him or not? Are the parents alive? Are the parents not alive?
hmm.
There's in the 1987 film, Evelyn actually tricks Tila into no, not Tila. She tricks Courtney Cox's character, who is just a human, into believing that her mom is still alive, which is not the case. So it was not that it was a nod to that, but it was like an interesting where you're like, oh, I've seen this before in the franchise where they trick somebody into thinking their parents are alive. So like it led to an interesting sequence too where he's kind of incorrectly deciding to just go to Snake Mountain and not talk about it. And like, this is what I got to do. And obviously, Tila's telling him that's probably a mistake, but he's going to do it anyways, which leads to a kind of an interesting moment. You know, he gets to learn a little bit about like still recognizing that he has to think things through and not just rely on his brute strength. But it was also a cool moment because even though Tila was disagreeing with him, she's still like, you know, I got your back every step of the way. Like,
Mm.
I'm gonna go with you just because. So I thought that was kind of a cool moment. I wasn't from a set standpoint, I wasn't always sold on all of the big statues around that one part because I don't remember those ever existing. So I did appreciate the fact that they all get busted by the end. So I was like, all
Yeah.
right, now it sets it up more like how I'm used to seeing it. And I did appreciate um like, I liked Eva Lynn better than I thought I was going to. I like, you know, I think Jared Leto did good. The Sorceress was another one that I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about and how they were gonna be able to do her bird form versus her, you know, sorceress form. I thought they handled that well for the most part, also. And, there was also a cool moment in the end where He-Man is going off on Battle Cat or, with Battle Cat to help somebody else that's in danger. They name the planet or the not the planet. They name the people that he's going to help. And they say like there was a problem on Avion or whatever. That's a real place that existed in Filmation. That's where Stratos is from. So it was a cool nod to Stratos, who was not in the film, which was kind of a bummer because he was one of the main masters that didn't get an appearance. So I did appreciate that. I think the only other main person that I didn't get to see that I would have wanted to see was Manny Faces, who was a good character that was able to change his face from a beast to a robot to a person.
Mm.
They didn't. They I know they can't do everything in the first movie, so like maybe that would be somebody we could get to see. But at least they mentioned Stratos' like species, so I guess that was like a little cool moment for me. And I do even though I didn't enjoy everything with the names with Fisto and Ram Man because I thought that got overplayed, I didn't mind the He-Man part at the end
Yeah.
because he hasn't been called He-Man until the last little bit, and then they're coming up with all the different names that he was calling everybody, and they're like, "Well, you had a name for yourself," and it's He-Man, and they laugh. I know some people had a problem with the fact that they're all laughing at his name when he's like the main character that the whole film's based off of, but
Mhm.
I actually felt like that made sense because that was like the appropriate way to laugh at some of these silly names, whereas I think the
Mhm.
Fisto and the Ram Man kind of went too much with it. Like it was funny at first, and then they like beat it in the ground. Whereas He-Man, we just got the one, so I kind of appreciated that a little bit more.
And the Warrior Princess, or I forget what was it, was that actually whatever the name was that actually Tina's name too, or is that
Tila, no, like I don't. I think he just made that up. I don't like. I don't know.
okay?
Like it was like Xena Warrior Princess or something that he was trying to
Yeah.
call her. Like whatever. I don't know if that was him like being bashful in a moment and not using like the real name, or if that was it was not a nod to anything that I know of.
Okay. Okay. I was just curious.
Oh, the
Uh,
other cool part was something that sorry, I know I'm rambling like a fanboy,
gosh.
but like Roboto, I was somewhat bummed in the trailers that Roboto did not look like Roboto because
Yeah.
I was like, well, how hard would it have been to make that look like the character or the toy or whatever? Like it doesn't seem that much difference, but they do address that because when Man at Arms or whoever rebuilds Roboto at the end, Roboto comes out looking exactly like that character did in the cartoon and in the toy. So I was like, oh,
Okay.
I just wasn't patient enough to wait for the see-through version of Roboto because that's how it's supposed to look in my head. So
Oh,
I was
nice.
happy with that.
It's funny because in the ending when they're like laughing, like they are laughing, like with their hands on the side, my son was like,
That
"Why?
was
Why are they?"
straight out of Filmation.
It's like, "Why are they laughing like that?" I was like, "It was like I got. I'll tell you later." Because it's like they're clearly doing. Even like I realized like they're clearly making it because I've not seen He Man, but I've seen plenty of '80s cartoons,
Yeah.
and that's how you laughed in '80s cartoons.
The
So
stock that was those stock animation cells that they could just reuse over and over again.
yeah. So but yeah. So again, that was to me a good example of like it being self-aware, like almost a self,
Mhm.
like almost like something you would see in Naked Gun,
Yeah.
but not like it was on the brink, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
But alrighty.
Well,
And
I think we covered just about everything we can cover. I'm sure if I saw it a second time, I'd pick out a few more things here and there, but I think it's worth watching, right? Like it's worth if you just want to have some
Definitely.
fun, especially if you know anything about the franchise, like it's good, but I don't think you have to know it in order to enjoy it. I think it can be just a fun like it's nice to get to a point where some of the summer blockbusters are worth watching. They can be
Mm,
like not like the end all be all, but it seemed like there was a lot of summers recently where the blockbusters were also like just poorly put together and like I don't want to turn off my brain because turning on my brain would hurt. Like there's a difference between just having an escape moment and having fun with something and having to like legit turn off your brain because otherwise you're gonna have trouble watching it. Like, I think there's a difference between the 2, and sometimes you get summer blockbusters that are just, like, they're just more
yeah.
painful than anything, and I enjoy that, like, it seems like this year and, recent blockbusters I've watched, like, have been somewhat refreshing, so I think this is kind of in that camp, like, you can go just have fun with this, and it it doesn't have to be
Yeah,
anything more
like I
than that.
said, yeah, like we said, it definitely does at least try to say something. Do a little bit with with the property, and I do think it like if we're ever to like if we were to do movie awards, like movie villains of the year or something like that, which is a award I used to do, like you know, Skeletor is up. I can't think of a better a villain, like a straight movie villain this year that I thought was more fun and entertaining and like the best part of the film more so than Skeletor this year.
Oh,
From the look, the execution of it on the special effects side, it was great. So
last fanboy moment, which is Skeletor, since you bring him up, a lot of people were really hoping that he would call somebody a boob in this film because he did that all the time in the Filmation series.
yeah,
And he did it like towards the end. He called one of his villains a boob or something like that. And I was like, oh, that'll please a lot of fanboys. So,
nice.
all
All
right.
righty.
So I think that does it for this edition of a current movie review. We've done 2 of them now, Dan. That's 2 in
I
the same
know.
year. Project Hail Mary and now He-Man. We'll see how many more we can get to. We will be getting back into our Western retrospective, though, with our next episode. So make sure you stay tuned for that, where we're going to be covering McCabe and Mrs. Miller. And you can keep uh, in touch with us or anything else we're doing by following our various social medias. So you can search out Dan at the Comic Concierge. You can search me out at Optimus Solo or the show at Cinema Geeks or Cinema Geekcast. And then you can always go to geekcastradio.com, the website that hosts all of our content, as well as some written articles and things of that nature that are not podcast form. So that does it for this episode. Tune in next time for another chance to listen to more of the Cinema Geeks.